Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sex Positive Me here on BFAM 109.6. It is Monday, October 18th, another Monday again. These Mondays come faster every week. I'm not liking this. But over the weekend, I had some great inspiration and decided we're going to be talking about sexual fantasies over this broadcast. So, as you can tell, I am solo. Miss Angelique is off today. She is enjoying Disneyland. She's doing a little birthday trip around the country and did some presentations yesterday out in Scottsdale, Arizona. I've seen many pictures when I realized it's desert and mountains. Anyway, but no, she's out in Disneyland and she will not be returning until this upcoming weekend. So I wish her the best that she's having an awesome time out there. But today we're going to be talking about sexual fantasies. I want to know lots about them. I want to know about the good ones and the healthy ones, the hot, steamy ones, even the obsessive and the destructive ones. So we know exactly what to avoid. So we always like to talk about those. And I also want to talk about what's behind all those fantasies. Why do we have them? Why do we lust after certain things? But uh, before I talk about all that, I want to mention my sponsor. It is One Condoms, the next generation of condoms. Check out myonecondoms.com because I've actually exclusively started using these condoms. Specifically, I love the Vanish because it is the thinnest condom I've ever seen. But there's actually, I love this, the tattoo one as well. They also have some really cool and innovative stuff that you can go to their website at myonecondoms.com and you can buy a condom specifically made for you. No, you don't have to go in and get sized, although that'd be a fun thing as well. You can actually go on their website and they have a fit kit. You can download it, you can measure your penis because sometimes, if you're too big, then it's tight and strangling it. If you're too small, then you feel like you're wearing a huge raincoat and that's not comfortable. Sometimes condoms are too long, sometimes they're too short, and you don't want to have it roll off either. So find the condom that is right for you, and I assure you, your sexual experiences will completely change. So go to myonecondoms.com and check that out. And we'll be back in just a moment to talk about sexual fantasies here on Sex Positive Me on BFAM 109.6. And we're back to Sex Positive Me. So, for today's show, I wanted to focus specifically on sexual fantasies because we all have them. From puberty on, we get them. We have these thoughts. Some are somewhat normal and tame, and some are about specific people, some are about specific activities, and they all stem from somewhere. The subconscious is one of those really interesting things where we again we have experiences and we end up forming these fantasies. And pretty much psychologists say everyone has sexual fantasies of some whether we share them or not, whether we make them come into the real world or not, we all have these sexual fantasies. And well, it's okay if they don't come into the real world because there are some fantasies that we can fantasize about that we probably shouldn't bring into the real world. Or maybe they're just plain physically impossible to bring into the real world. But this weekend I got this bug, so I started doing a lot of research on this. And it turns out there's been so many surveys about sexual fantasies. And there's some statistics that I really want to share to you that I found so interesting. And now that we're post God, the god awful movie that we all hate, 50 Shades, uh, as much as we don't dislike it, it has opened up the door so many people, or at least more people, are starting to explore and share those sexual fantasies, whether it's in that BDSM realm or not. It's sort of been a movie that's given us a lot more permission to really explore or at least talk about the things that perhaps we couldn't before because whether we're ashamed or whether no one was interested about it. But I, there was a survey done of 4,000 Americans. And this is specifically Americans. And it was found out that 93% of women and 81% of men, again, of these 4,000, fantasize about being sexually dominated. Well, what does dominated really mean here? Basically, it is with consent giving up control, giving up your will to someone else's to be obedient to a domineering person. And I know in my experience, 93% of women, even I thought that was a little bit high, but even 81% of men. And if you think about it, though, it's not something that most of us are comfortable talking about. Like, I will talk with my macho friends, and they're like, yeah, there's no way I take control in the bedroom. I do this and that. Um, but in the bedroom, when it's nice and quiet, those attitudes seems to change. And the most interesting things, facts that I'm starting to find out with by reading these studies is a lot of those people are in positions of control in some aspect or the other, whether it's control of their household, control of their job. And I also found an older study. This study I'm quoting was done in 2017. Found an older study going back to 95, and the numbers were actually quite a bit lower. Back then, it was something like only 60% of women wanted to be dominated, and it was something like 30% of men. So I'm curious if the fact is in the last 30 years that either people are more comfortable expressing that they want to become dominated or they have fantasies about being dominated, or because a lot of this actually stems from your real world life, your job, what you do every day. And are we getting into a society now with more stress, more decisions, more all of that anxiety going on that the thought of giving up your control to another person is really, really, really satisfying. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the sexual domination part, or at least domination at best, giving up control. I know we have that, of course, American macho attitude, many of us, that we will not give up control. We're in control. But the truth is, we give up control plenty of times. Do you go get a massage? Well, what are you doing? You're laying down and you're trusting someone else, usually a stranger, or at least someone, probably not someone you're very intimate with, although it would be nice if to have a partner that is a massage therapist. But you're putting your trust in them, and they are going to move your body. They are going to beat on your muscles. They're going to go ahead and massage you and do all this stuff to you. And honestly, if done incorrectly, can cause damage. You're putting your trust in them, and you're jelly in their hands. That is one way of being dominated. If you go to a barber or a hairdresser, you are putting total trust. They have sharp objects near your ears and your head. Again, you are laying back and you're being taken care of. So I think this entire concept of domination definitely needs to be rethought. It's not a surrender. And I know we use the term submission a lot when we describe it, but it's a giving up of control. And if that form of giving up control means laying down and having someone give you a massage, or whatever someone does to you that you enjoy, and you give up control to them, well, in a way, that is being dominated. So, on the other side of it is the control part of it. The people that are fantasizing about being sexually dominant and taking control. And here's where it actually flipped, because 85% of men and 76% of women in this study fantasize. Uh, wait, did I do that right? I did it. No, fantasize about sexually dominating someone else. So apparently, we have a lot of switches out there, at least if the percentages are right. So there's definitely this attraction in sexual fantasies of either gaining or losing control, about having someone completely at your disposal, or being putty in someone else's hands and having to be completely obedient to someone else. That power exchange is huge in sexual fantasies. Now, I do found another study here that I totally blame 50 Shades for. It said 60% of women in this study of 4,000 Americans would like to be tied up, spanked, and or forced to have sex. So we're talking consensual non-consent. That may be a new term out there for some people. What consensual non-consent is, it's the more politically correct, psychological, professional term for rape fantasy. The idea of having someone forced upon you. Now, for some of us, that can be horrifying for whatever experiences, whatever trauma we may have. For others, the idea of being taken, the idea of being less than human, being a piece of meat. Again, I'm doing all this, and obviously, rape is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about consensual sexual activity, and I can't stress that enough. But that idea of the play rape, the consensual non consent, is huge among, believe it or not, it's mostly women. A study I found said it was 60% of women and only 20% of men. But again, it's losing that complete control. So there are so many different fantasies out there. And the more I did research, the more I found out how surprising there were. There's role play in the form of daddy daughter, daddy son, mommy little, even grandparent, um, and granddaughter or grandchild. Again, though, this is role play, not actual incest. But the idea of playing these roles is something that's huge. Student and professor, so ended up on one of the top lists, as well as boss and employee. If you ever look at those, they're all dynamics of power exchange in the sense that whether you're playing the daddy, the professor, or the boss, you're the one in charge making, again, the other person, the other partner do your bidding, do your will, do your, the person who obviously there's a power dynamic between the two of them. So the more I look, the more these fantasies are truly based a lot in the mind and less in the actual sexual activity. It is a lot of role play. So started doing more research and found out the number one sexual fantasy of heterosexual men is two women. It is the most common, and believe it or not, has been consistently the most common going back to the Kenzie days. So going back to when they first started doing studies of this in the late in the 50s, the idea of again, two women or multiple women to one man is the number one heterosexual male fantasy. However, the number one fantasy among Americans is group sex. Group sex is one of those very interesting things that it can take on so many different dynamics. Whether we're talking about orgies, which is again an equal number or fairly equal number of different genders. It could be gangbangs, where it's again the majority, or there's one of one gender and lots of the other genders. Um, those are actually the most uh, common among Americans. Now, I said again, all these sexual fantasies that we talk about, as long as they're not hurting someone, as long as they're not a problem in your life, in your job, in your relationship, as long as they're done consensually, or even if they're kept as a fantasy, those are what is called healthy fantasies. It's good to have fantasies and fantasize and think about things you want to do or things you might want to do. Um, Even some of the more extreme fantasies, as long as they're done consensually or kept in your kept in your mind and not acted out. Um, Weirdest fantasy, or I don't want to use the word weird. I'd say most extreme fantasy I ever heard was a cannibal fantasy. And turning out that was actually a common one. Now, obviously, we can't eat each other. That would go ahead and destroy the fabric of society. However, there has been, I read an article of a couple basically simulating a barbecue and pretending to do either cannibalism, and the other one was amputation. Again, these are more extreme fantasies out there, but it was a couple who found a successful way to fantasize about it and then not have, of course, the legal and moral implications of eating another human being. But like that, all sexual fantasies do not have to be fulfilled. And the reason why I'm saying this is we live in a world where STDs and sexual health is definitely a fact. And We always recommend be safe out there. Obviously, I'll mention again our sponsor is One Condoms, which I am a fan of and use quite a bit. So obviously, group sex, I said, can be done in many different dynamics. Believe it or not, one of the higher, or should I say, one of the groups inside of group sex. No, group is not the right word. One of the fantasies inside the group sex fantasy is anonymous partners. And that can range from being blindfolded and having multiple partners that you never see their face, or having a dark room, which is basically a room where all the lights are kept out, all the windows are blanked out. Uh, but that anonymous partner thing is definitely something that comes with a lot of risk if we were to move this into the real world. There's a lot of health issues and possibly safety issues with making this fantasy come true. However, it is a hot fantasy, and it may be a fantasy that is really fantastic to talk about, to fantasize with your partner, to share with them, but also reassure them that this is probably something that won't happen, or at least not happen in that dangerous type of way. So we'll be back in just a moment on Sex Positive Me, and we're going to continue to talk about sexual fantasies here on BFAM 109.6.
Doing good.
Why, thank you. I get to talk about fantasies. I'm good.
And you're not getting poked.
No, but I need someone to poke.
Yeah, I know. I can see you missing it.
Okay, and we're back. And we'd like to talk a little bit about one of our favorite sponsors, King Crate. KingCrate.com is a awesome site because you can sign up and actually either subscribe or buy products directly. So, what is the subscription, you ask? Thank you. Uh, Basically, it is kink variety each month. So, think about subscribing, and this month you might get something in medical play, of which coincidentally we have a medical play class coming up on Thursday. Or next month, you might get something on impact play or perhaps candles. And then a month later, you get one on, oh, I don't know, photography. There are so many crates. They've been doing this for, I think, about 5 years now, is what the company's been open. And they spend so much time in research finding the products to put together. And what's nice is because it's a subscription base, the value is amazing. They're always shipping you more than what you pay for because, again, they can buy it in bulk and they can go ahead and ship it out in bulk. Now, is everything something you want to go ahead and play with? Maybe not, but you have the opportunity to play with lots of stuff. Maybe stuff that you thought about. I've never actually thought about playing with glow in the dark markers with my partner in the dark with a black light on, section again, naked. But it came in a kink crate. We played with it. I loved it. What I also love is they go ahead and tailor the boxes for your gender or your couple gender, which means whether you are a man, a woman, a heterosexual couple, or a gay couple, whether it's male or female, they have kink crates that are tailored to you. So go ahead and go to sexpositiveme.com, click on the kink crate logo, and that'll go ahead and take you to our store where we highlight our favorite products. So go check them out and let us know if you like it or not. So, we are here talking about sexual fantasies. Mm. And I always like to say, whatever your sexual fantasy is, do it without shame. And that is a lot easier said than done. Shame is something that we are kind of built with about there's a certain way we need to act and a certain way we need to be seen and behave. And what's really great about these fantasies is they break those molds. Unfortunately, that's also the same thing that keeps them in our head and prevents them from sharing with other people, even our partners. I have counseled many couples where one of the partners had sexual fantasies that they thought they wouldn't share out of fear they would be judged by their partner, which I think is a really really horrible thing because again, our partners are the people that they're our best friends. They're the people we share our lives with, and I believe you should be able to share everything with your partner regardless of how out there it is. So, coming back to sexual fantasies, we talked about some of the fantasies out there, the group sex, the as I go scrolling through my list, somewhat lost without Angelique. But we talked about the role play fantasies, having sex with, like I said, anonymous partners, which again, probably something either needs to be done in very certain circumstances or obviously done safely, because unfortunately STDs are a fact of life. And we also talked about consensual non consent or rape fantasies. But there's actually quite a bit of gender bender fantasies out there. And these are not necessarily people who are looking to get dressed up in men's or women cross dressing and then going out in public, but like doing it in the bedroom or like certain aspects of it. One of the more popular fantasies for men is women's shoes. Some like to admire them, others fantasize about wearing them, which I'm a size 13, so I don't have this fantasy, but I know getting sneakers in my size can be challenging at times. The idea of getting high heels is just yeah, that's I think I'd rather look for what is it? The Lost Ark. You probably have a better chance of finding that one. But again, now that we have the internet, they're out there and there are stores that cater to that. But a few years ago, this is pre-COVID, there was a fantasy that really hit me and I won't say is unusual, but I will say for everything that I've experienced was very surprising. And I went to a erotic book conference. So there were authors as well as cover models for erotic books. And when I say erotic books, the best way to explain this is Fabio. That perfect washboard stomach, big muscles, usually doing something like standing on the front of a boat or in Roman armor or so something with vampires occasionally. But again, it was an erotic book conference. So there was approximately 3,000 fans is how I'm going to term this. 98% of them were women who came down for this conference to meet their authors. Um, but I found a section that I found shocking. Again, no judgment. I never judge anyone's sexual fantasies or activities, but there was a huge amount of gay erotica here. So there was a lot of heterosexual housewives. And I'm saying that because I met several of them, and most of them, this was their like once a year trip of their own that would come down to go to these conferences and leave their husbands behind, the kind of their girls' weekend out. But most of them were heterosexual women who read and fantasized about gay erotic. And then I started finding out that I won't say a huge percentage, but there were women who specifically wrote gay erotic. So I had to, of course, investigate and read one of their smaller books. And it was hot. It was very sexual. It was written, for the most part, as erotica goes, written well, much better than the original version of Twilight. But the fact that women were reading and writing gay erotica, gay men erotica, that's where I want to go here. There was some lesbian erotica, but not nearly as much as gay men erotica. So it was again shocking. Didn't know that existed. But let's see. Let's keep going through other fantasies. Humiliation and degradation. Most of us think that is, or I won't say most, but usually in real world terms, being humiliated or degraded or talked down to, we'll say, isn't a positive experience. We all have experiences in high school or grammar school of probably, I'm saying most, degraded or humiliated, and it really wasn't the best experience of our lives. However, in sexual terms, being degraded, being treated less than human, being spit on, being told they're worthless, slut, whatever else it is, That's actually quite a big fantasy. However, in my experience in working with these fantasies, the specific one, it's interesting that everyone has a certain term or certain list of words and actions that not to do. And what I mean is, I've seen degrading scenes and humiliation scenes where being called, uh, lots of words I won't use on the radio, and a slut, a whore, and all this, but mention the word stupid or fat, and the scene is over. So it's fantasies, but of course, like I said, being done consensually, but being done in an envelope, in a box, in a certain set of rules that fits. And again, that is what negotiation is all about. We've talked about negotiation on past shows, and negotiation is extremely important. Negotiation should always come before any type of scene, especially with new partners. Again, once you've been partners with someone for a while, you may learn what's their tells, um, what's their no nos, what's their hard and soft limits, and again, you get the feel for them. So you may eventually agree to that type of we're moving on without negotiation. But especially in the beginning, or especially with a new partner, a negotiation is almost an art form. It's a way of finding what makes a person tick and what they like and what they don't like. So during this negotiation, during degrading and humiliation scenes, I'm always finding there's either words or actions or again something to that is triggering. So you can go ahead and put those on a do not talk about list, do not do list. Um, I've had several. I had a degradation fantasy where the bottom, who was female, you could hit her in the face, you can slap her, you could put your fingers in her mouth. There was no words on the list, and it was just the weirdest thing. Don't touch her legs, knees, or feet. And again, I say I've used the word weird, which again, nothing's really weird. I'm channeling my vanilla today, but it's all done in this. We'll say I don't want to say envelope, but it's done in a way where the negotiation takes place and the constraints of how this will come out is done. Now, once you go ahead and again get through your negotiation, doing these sexual fantasies is amazing. There's amazing stuff you can do. And there's also sexual fantasies that are really, really hot under certain circumstances. And those might be sort of like we say hard and soft limits. These might be sort of like your fantasies that are closer to your soft limits, which means you really don't want them every day, but you may want them under certain circumstances. I always equate this with food. And what I mean is, I love apple pie. I could eat apple pie every day. That is something I absolutely love. However, certain fish I would never eat for breakfast. And depending on what it's served with, I probably wouldn't eat for lunch either. So there's certain foods and stuff that are fantastic once in a while, but I wouldn't want every day. Same thing with your fantasies. There are certain ones in there that are just in a certain mood at a certain time. When the stars are in just the right place and the moon turns blue and the sky is clear and whatever, everything aligns, then this fantasy is okay. Otherwise, it may even be not just on the no list, but it may be repulsive. The interesting thing about that is for several people now that I've talked to, the discussion of water sports, and that means involving urine in your sexual activity, is one of those things that there are people that, again, could do that anytime. There's plenty of people that just need to be in the right mindset for that. Now, when they're out of that mindset, I've had people say, partners and again, clients say they think about it and it's repulsive. The idea of someone peeing on me is why? Why would I ever do that? But when they get into that absolute right headspace, in that right place, then they lust for it. Then it's okay. And once they leave that headspace, they're done. I know Angelique likes to say, I am with that with semen. When we're playing, it's great. Once I have an orgasm, for 5 minutes, my brain turns off. And this is kind of common, not common, but fairly common with a lot of men and penis owners that once we have an orgasm, and again, that's done. There's a recovery time in there. This happens for women as well, in all genders, to tell you the truth. But yeah, sometimes she wish I would just keep continuing on, as I guess many partners do. So water sports is one of those. Uh, feet and armpits. That is another fantasy that is coming up more and more. And where I'm getting all this from, by the way, is I'm doing a lot of research in porn categories as well as what's viewed, and also looking at the psychological papers that have been published on this. And feet and armpits is one of those things that there are some people who find uh, feet extremely erotic, whether it's touching someone else's feet, looking at someone else's feet, or even licking of someone else's foot, very erotic, or even having their feet again touched. Uh, but there's some people that will do it again in a certain mindset. Same thing for armpits. I was at an event over the weekend, and I saw someone who literally walked around and asked if they could stick their nose in someone's armpit, and they would give a deep, deep inhale. And I heard them even ask if they're on deodorant, and if they said no, it it was a turn on for them. That it was this natural body odor. Now, scientifically, there is something about about pheromones that definitely is there. But again, for some of us, it is a mindset that those pheromones during the heat of sex, and I think we all know that smell of sex, that can kind of get us into that mood where it's arousing. However, when we usually think of armpits in more of a vanilla everyday term, or body odor in a more everyday term, we're not really thinking the pleasant arousal sexual type. We're thinking the you've gone to the gym or you've been out in the sun too long type. So there are so many of these things which are turn ons, which are sexual fantasies, that are either sexual fantasies for some and either turn offs for others, or depending on the mindset, they can be one or the other. And if they're in the right mindset, this thing could be completely arousing and super, super sexual. And when we're out of that mindset, they're either blase or they're actually repulsive. Anyway, the joy of being human. Let's see. We also, let's see, another huge sexual fantasy here is exhibitionism and voyeurism. And basically, exhibitionism means having someone watch you have sex, and voyeurism is watching others have sex or do something sexual. Now, in most states, again, non consensual exhibitionism and voyeurism is illegal. You can't go around and peek in someone's room, bedroom window without having some repercussions. That's just creepy and dangerous. At the same time, you can't go ahead and walk out in the middle of the street and start masturbating or having sex. You're going to end up in jail. However, there is consensual exhibitionism, whether that's done uh, in a certain area, whether it's at home, whether it's at a club, again, swinger club, whether it's at a nudist resort. And again, nudist resorts, I'll say right off the bat, some of them are kind of sexual friendly. And then there's lots of them which are called like natural nudist, which are definitely not. It is nudism without sexuality. But exhibitionism, voyeurism is huge. For many of the erotic dancers I know, especially those who started off by saying they don't know if they can do this, the moment they get up there and feel that crowd, feel that attention, that exhibitionist part of them comes out, and they never even know they had it. So voyeurism again is the other part of it, of watching, which is actually going to lead us into something called cuckolding. But we'll talk about that when we come back here on Sex Positive Me on BFAM 109.6. And we are back. And this segment is brought to us by SDC.com. Seek, Discover, Create. It is the world's largest lifestyle community. So if you're looking for like-minded people, couples, singles, swingers, kinksters, they have more up there than I've seen on many other sites. It is a site we belong to both professionally as well as personally. We've met a lot of great people up in there. What I like though, it is not just a meat market of people looking to, well, have fun, which is also good. They also have a lot of resources. We publish a lot of articles up there. There's a whole list of parties and events. So if you're looking to get into the lifestyle, if you're looking to explore, if you're looking to just be a voyeur and watch, they'll show you places in your area where that's going on. They'll also show about different events, everything from cruises to takeover events to vacations outside of the country. But check them out. They also have this great live streaming feature, which we've been taking advantage of, and we have been doing our broadcast every Monday night at 7 p.m. So we'll be doing that actually tonight. And just so you know, tonight I will be solo again, but I'm going to be talking about puppy play because I did an event on Friday with other puppies. And I've been to a few other events, but they were mostly a little different. But anyway, we're going to go down this entire thing of what puppy play is, why do we do it, what is the satisfaction of it, how does that even work? But anyway, if you're interested in SDC, please go to sexpositiveme.com, click on the SDC logo, and that'll go ahead and give us a little referral there. So sign up and you can watch us live on there tonight at 7 p.m. on Date Night with the Lunas. So we are back and talking about sexual fantasies, and we left off talking about exhibitionism and voyeurism, which actually leads into one of the most interesting for me fantasies out there that is becoming hugely popular. Something called cuckolding. Not cuck holding, there's no H in it. It's Cuckolding, cuckolding. Well, what is a cuck? That's a great question. It's a common fantasy where one partner has sex with again, someone outside of the partnership while the other partner watches. Now, to me, that sounds a lot like voyeurism. And although several sites have termed that as the definition, if you do a little more research, what you will find is that there's actually a form of humiliation and degradation that goes along with that. In many cuckolding scenes, the I'm going to go ahead and say, for the most part, cuckolding scenes is done where the man is the cuck. So, in a heterosexual partner, we'll talk about that for the moment. The man would watch while the woman has sex with another partner and together humiliates the man. And that can range from telling him how much better of a lover the current lover is as opposed to her partner, or even degrading his size, about he's so much bigger than you, he's so much fitter than you. And again, for a topic like humiliation, it's sort of surprising that it has become just as popular. However, there's a new, I won't say new category, but a new term called cuckoldress, which is the same thing but reversed in the sense that the man is having sex with another woman while the man's partner, a female, is again watching and or being degraded about how much better, fitter, whatever the degrading is, to go ahead, but basically to make them feel like they're outside. Now, growing up, I'll say right off the bat, I was the fat kid. So that type of being degraded is not on my list. And we all have some type of trauma in our background that plays a part in our sexual fantasies. If you go to the psychology of it and even the statistics of it, a lot of us who will say were humiliated, or better yet, didn't have control or feel like they had controlled as a child, crave control as we're going on. Now, I say a lot because as much as these are stereotypes, they are nowhere near 100%. They're probably nowhere near even 60%. And some of us just like it because, well, we like it. Sometimes being humiliated, sometimes having group sex fantasies, sometimes involving in water sports is in no way connected with a trauma. Sometimes they are. But again, the psychology behind it, it will say half a dozen to one, six to the other. So, what would it be like to be in a cuckold scene like that? Well, several of those scenes go a little even to the breeding and impregnation side, which is also another fantasy that's out there. The idea of getting a partner pregnant. And one of the interesting things again, I keep saying that word interesting, I have found is I've interviewed a few people who have this type of fantasy, and they were males and they had vasectomies. So it was physically impossible for them to again impregnate a woman or anyone for that matter. However, during the sexual activities, the conversation went towards, I'm going to come in you. I'm going to knock you up. I'm, I'm gonna put my sperm in you and get you pregnant and all that. Um, that's where the conversation went that aroused them, even though that wasn't a possibility. Which, again, so cool of all the different stuff we can learn about the human anatomy, about human fantasies. So let's think. Let's find some other fantasies out here as I'm going through. We talked about porn. Oh yeah, porn or being in porn, being on video. It's another form of exhibitionism. Um, but I'll touch and say is when does something switch from being a fantasy to a disorder? Because yes, there are, if you search the web, there are medical magazines and medical publications that will term voyeuristic disorder, exhibitionist disorder. And so when does something switch from being a fantasy to a disorder? Obviously, this is something kind of important because I know I've never been in jail and I never want to go to jail. But essentially, a disorder is when it becomes something compulsive and out of control. So putting all the legal aspects aside of it, when something switches from being a fantasy or a activity that's healthy and enjoyed, when it becomes a disorder is when it goes out of control. What I mean by that is when you can't control yourself from, say, taking your clothes off in public, which again will get you in legal trouble, but um, which is again different from a fetish. And I know we've mentioned this before. And I want to say a fetish is something required for you to get sexually aroused. And there's plenty of people who have fetishes. Some people have fetishes for certain materials like rubber or latex, or maybe something furry. Well, some people may have fetishes that go more towards like wet water, or hell, I've heard of a clown fetish. Again, no judgment on any of this, but when it becomes a disorder, is when it actually starts causing problems in your life or other people's lives. So it's always something to be aware of and look out for. But let's see, what other fantasies haven't I talked about? And if you're in the chat room, go ahead and drop them in. Let's see if anyone has commented on other fantasies. Obviously, BDSM, that is a huge one. Being giving up control, bondage. Bondage is another huge fantasy. Thank you very much for that one. Taboo. Yes, that is another huge fantasy. There's a lot of fantasies based around taboo as this, in the sense that something that is socially inappropriate and maybe even something you wouldn't want to do. Like, obviously, I mentioned daddy daughter play, mother son play. Obviously, that is incest. And for the most part, that is pretty much looked down upon. However, the taboo act of fantasizing about it and perhaps acting out those roles without actually doing them is, of course, again, a fantasy. Now, of course, again, I'm going to say this one more time. It's consensually and it's above legal age. I'm not in any way, we're exploring fantasies here. But let's see, gender bender. I was looking at some really great notes here on some other fantasies. Group sex, public. Uh, Let's see. I know we got some more. I see so much around power and control. Oh, rough sex. Rough sex is definitely a huge fantasy. Being basically manhandled is a huge fantasy. Non-monogamy, forbidden sex. Of course, there's the typical role playing. The pirate and the maiden, or the Disney's princess and the prince and princess, or playing Cinderella is always the huge fantasy out there. But when you start stepping back and looking, a lot of these, they are more based on the mental aspect of it than what we're actually doing with our bodies. A lot of these fantasies, again, playing role play or um, cuckolding, or so much of these satisfy a part in our mind that needs satisfying, that needs to be out there. That is a normal part of, again, being human. One of the things I will always stress is, whatever your sexual fantasy, as long as it's consensual and you're not hurting anyone else, enjoy it. Whatever that may be. But, ugh. So, anyway, what other sexual fantasies? I'm getting some comments here off in the room. Sexual fantasies about animals. That is actually quite a common one. Which actually goes back into, possibly, not always, the aspect of critters and furries. Now, I will say I'll be talking about critters, which is part of puppy play tonight. But a lot of furries, it's not a sexual thing at all. Some fantasize about it sexually, and obviously, but for one of my friends who is a furry, made the perfect aspect that his suit cost him about $5,000. And if you think any type of bodily fluids getting near that, hell no. The dry cleaning bill is hell, which makes a lot of sense. But yeah, sexual fantasies have been something going back to the Roman age, and it has been depicted in, actually, even before that, it's been depicted in artwork, in literature. Um, Basically, even the whole vampire realm is based in sexual fantasies. The whole being taken and being forced to do something, having no control over yourself, and the whole biting on the neck is very, very sexual. If you think about the time where all this started in the 1800s, when Bram Stoker started with Dracula, moving on all the way to, and I'll say this unwillingly, Twilight, all the activities going on in vampirism is sexual. Now, if we go back a little bit and talk about Interview with the Vampire, it was not only sexual, but it had homophobic tendencies going over that, between Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt. Who would have thought? But uh, it was definitely sexual. Another thing that comes out of this, these sharing of fantasies, though, is community and acceptance. One of the, I'd say, most common mental ailments we hear about in therapy from a lot of people is the feeling of being alone, the feeling of loneliness, and having secrets that we cannot tell. Sharing of fantasies, again, even if it's something that's never going to come true, if you have a fantasy um, that you're like, no, this would be dangerous, it would never happen, that's okay. The still idea of just sharing it with someone is a huge relief. That common getting together, it's actually finding a community based around an activity like that. So, again, if you're out there and you have a fantasy, I would love to hear about it. But I think we're going to go ahead and take a short commercial break here. Come back in a moment and talk more about fantasies on Sex Positive Me on BFAM 109.6. And we are back. And for this segment, I want to talk about our sponsor, the Wow Tech Group. They are actually the world leader in design, manufacturing, marketing of intimate pleasure products, which means they have brands like WeVibe, which is one of my favorite, Womanizer, one of Angelique's favorite, Pure Romp, and Arcwave. I did a review on the Arcwave Ion. It's out there on YouTube. It is essentially the most advanced sleeve I have ever used. And a sleeve is basically something that you'd put around or on your penis to give stimulation. It's not really a sleeve, in my opinion, because sleeves usually have to move. This moves on its own. It has this pressure airwave technology, which is very intense. So go ahead and check them out. Go to our site, sexpositiveme.com, click on the Wow Tech Group, take a look through. There's a few specials out there right now, but tune in tonight. We're actually going to be doing, actually, no, we're going to be talking a little bit about WeVibe, but coming up, we have a class on Thursday night, this Thursday, on medical play. So we've talked a little bit about medical play. We are going to be covering everything from playing doctor to taking someone's temperature, giving someone an erotic medical exam, all the way to water sports, pumping, infusion. We're going to talk about extreme stuff like sounding. So, if you ever fantasize about playing doctor or having someone play doctor upon you in a very naughty and possibly sexual way, go ahead and go to our site. Actually, go to fairvilla.com, click on education, and those tickets are available. They are right now available for $15, and it's a virtual class. So you can tune in anywhere, you can watch the class, and you're given again, it's $15 for the entire household. So get a few of your friends together, come on and watch that class. I will be presenting it solo on Thursday. So I'd love to go ahead and have some people come up. I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsors, One Condoms, King Crate, SDC, and the Wow Tech Group. I also want to say, if you like the content you've been hearing from us, go ahead and check us out on social media because we do a lot of research finding articles, not just on the sexual activity, but again, we work a lot in relationships because sex is a part of a relationship. Absolutely. Whether you don't have sex, whether your relationship is based on sex, or whether you're just the average couple, that sex is always a part of it somewhere. So check us out on social media, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Twitter. We're right now on Instagram as SPM the Lunas. Instagram tends to be the most, we'll say, conservative of the social media platforms that we're working with. But we put out there, and again, we try to go ahead and put our articles together and put them out there as well. So to wrap up our talk today on fantasies, fantasies are something we all have, whether you deny them, whether you admit them, whether you just don't want to talk about them, or whether they are something you cannot stop talking about. We all have them. They're in your mind. It's part of being human. And usually those fantasies, well, they may or may not be about doing something unusual, something naughty, something specific. Usually that naughty thing comes in because it's like that childish thing we have to go ahead and eat the cookie we're not supposed to eat, to do the thing we're not doing, to get in a little bit of trouble to get attention. And as we grow up as adults, that persists, that idea of being naughty, because during the day, during our normal lives, we are hit and ruled by so many rules of how we act, how we talk, how we look, how we relate to other people. And in these fantasies, those rules can be put on hold. They can be put on the side just for a little while, where we can live out the fact that we want to be the sadistic asshole, or we want to be the helpless princess, or we want to be whatever it is, or we just want to explore a certain activity, whether that's certain clothes, certain toys, um, certain sexual activities, whatever it is, it's completely up to you. So go ahead and enjoy that. Tonight, we will be back. I will be back at 7 p.m. and we will be simulcasting as well on SDC.com. And we're going to be talking about puppy play. So, what is it? How does it work? Why do I do it? Why does a lot of people do it? Right now, there are events across the nation on puppy play, and it's not just puppies. The general, more umbrella term is critters, because I've seen foxes, I have seen foxes, puppies, wolves, bears, whatever whatever animal you kind of relate to is really all you need to do. And again, it's role play, but it's getting out of your it's getting into that mindset of where you're not yourself. You're not even human at that point. Doesn't mean we're not governed by rules, but we get to be someone else. We get to go ahead and take those rules and put them aside just for a little while we get to be something else. So again, tune in tonight, and then on Monday's show, tune on back in. Angelique will be back from her trip, and I guarantee you she's going to have a lot to talk about because she has been across the country, 3 different stops, and I'm sure she's going to have some fun for us to talk about. So tune in next Monday. And again, my name is John C. Luna. Thank you for tuning in for Sex Positive Me. Always remember that, well, sex is part of being human. Enjoy it. Don't be ashamed of it. And I will see you next time. Take care.